I'll seek a motion to reopen the meeting. Moved by Councillor Samantha Ratnam, seconded by Councillor Rob Thompson. All those in favour? I declare that carried. We'll just resume. Are there any councillors? Oh, Councillor Thompson's on the speak.
I'm happy to move an alternative motion, if I could. My alternative motion is as presented on page, whatever it is, presented up there, and I've just got a part B. Part B reads, the Director, City Infrastructure, investigate the implementation of hockey stick car parking bay line marking in Reynard Street between Sydney Road and Upfield Railway Line. I have a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Seconded by Councillor Samantha Ratnam.
Thank you for the submission and thank you also for the contact from the organisation that's building it and spending a bit of time on the phone with me answering a couple of other questions, which was quite informative. Particularly of interest was the fact that that you would, I was going to say man match, but you would woman match tenants to the units, and the ability to indicate to them that this is a non-car parking friendly site. So the concern that officers had and that I had and that one of the residents just indicated then was the fact that it's right near a railway line. So those car parks at the very front of it, coming in and out of there, could cause further issues, hence the reason that one's been deleted and will continue to leave that as a condition. The issue with the overshadowing does affect the neighbour, and quite significantly if you have a look at their backyard. And whilst 8 square metres doesn't sound like a great deal, it probably does if you're living there. The two homes the two units that this affects will rake that ceiling slightly and bring it down to 1.8 or whatever it was at one end. I think that condition is manageable, and with all the other conditions in there, I think it's probably a great outcome. I thank you, Nick, for your points in relation to the graffiti wall. I was under the impression that had been taken out as far as the rough wall was taken out. So it's now smooth and they've changed the colour. As for the graffiti, I'm sure it'll get graffitied and it'll look great once it is, if somebody does it professionally. And that's one of the reasons that the issue with the way it's been laid out too is to set it back from the neighbour, and that's why it's sort of facing the other direction. I suppose it was a difficult piece of land to work with, and they've done a fantastic job as far as the outcome that's concerned, and we put some pretty stringent conditions on it when we were selling the land, so it's sort of all balanced out in the end. The little further amendment or addition that I've put to it, which is not really an amendment and certainly doesn't affect the residents or the development here, is purely that we'd like to see that particular part of Reynard Street, the car parking in there is a nightmare. I live just off Reynard Street at the other end, so I drive down here quite a lot and spend a bit of time at the Post Office Hotel, so I understand the issues. One of the things that local residents have approached me about particularly has been car parking here. One of the quick fix solutions potentially is to implement hockey stick car parking markings, which just sort of indicate where people can and cannot park. We will attempt to see whether the Director of Infrastructure is happy with that, and if they are, we can implement it, and that may have alleviate some of the problem in that particular part of the street, or it may add to it. But we will wait and listen. And again, as I said to the applicant in the last one, or the residents from the last one, is please engage with council on parking, particularly at this location. The more you do, the more active we are about it, and we can continue to try and alleviate the issues.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Ratnam.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to concur with Councillor Thompson's comments. He's covered much of the ground that we've been deliberating on tonight, and thank the objectors and the applicant for their presentations tonight. We have attempted to sort of consider them a bit more through the adjournment as well, and strike a balance. Definitely hear you about the car parking concerns, and the condition is signalling that we do really mean that we want to follow up on improving that condition in the vicinity. And in terms of the applicant, I definitely heard you in terms of some of your concerns. If you've seen me at the planning committee meeting before, I really do have a thing about space and livable properties. However, the overshadowing impacts is just getting that balance right, and its impact on the private open space of the neighbouring dwelling, is quite significant. So that's why we've tried to reach this compromise. I acknowledge that it's not ideal and not everything you ask for, but hopefully it is a compromise that is satisfactory in some way. More broadly, though, I just wanted to commend this application coming to council. It's very rare that we have opportunities on council to really sort of practice what we preach and put the practice behind some of the policy directions that we want to see this council going towards. And affordable housing, particularly for this group of women, is something a number of us in council, all of council, is very committed to through the sale of the land and seeding the idea and the initiative. We've been 100% behind it. It's wonderful to see it come to fruition, and I'm glad to hear of the work that you've done with council in preparation for it. And I hope the rest of the community also embraces what a transformative project this is. It's very rare that we see this, that councils are able to do this, and in partnership with the Women's Property Initiative, I'm really, really proud to sit up at this panel and be part of this decision. So I wish you all the best for the next stages, and Moreland Council will be very, very proud of the work that's yet to come.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. I'll put the recommendations on page 81 with the inclusion of Part B to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried, and I'll pass to Darrell to sum up the process from here.
Councillor, the Urban Planning Committee has determined to support the application subject to the conditions set out in tonight's agenda. A notice of decision to grant a permit will now be issued. A copy will be sent to all objectors and the applicant. The objectors will have 21 days to lodge an appeal against Council's decision with feedback, and the applicant will have 60 days to lodge an appeal against any conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to planning application 324 to 324A, Bell Street, Coburg, planning permit application MPS 2013-1.02.
There you go. On time. Thanks for being on time, Rob.
Thank you, councillors, members of the gallery. The third item in this evening's agenda is a development at 324 Bell Street in Coburg. You can find the report at page 127 of the agenda, and plans are page 143. The proposal is for 10 three-storey dwellings and 2 double-storey dwellings. As you can see, subject site is the car wash located on the northern side of Bell Street in Coburg. Just there, we'll go to some photos. So the subject site has an area of about 1,400 square metres. It's zoned residential growth zone, and it's in the Melville Bell Street Neighbourhood Activity Centre. For the subject, the proposed development, what we have is basically the 10 three-storey dwellings up to essentially that line there, and then to the eastern boundary, adjoining the units to the east, are 2 two-storey dwellings. Again, going up to the first floor is living and kitchens, and then the second bedroom at the top floor. So all the dwellings are 2-bedroom. In relation to Bell Street, Gordon Street to the side. So the building is built with a 0 setback off Gordon Street. And the elevation to Brunswick Lane, which is at the back of the site, Brunswick Lane, is unconstructed. Part of any permit to issue recommended by the officer is for some works, construction works along the laneway. There were 9 objections to the proposal. Those objections included overdevelopment, neighbourhood character, landscaping, noise, and increased traffic. That's basically the proposal. The recommendation by the officer is to support the proposal subject to conditions contained in the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Are there any members of the gallery who wish to speak in relation to this application? Yes, please come forward.
never done this before, so sorry if it's not prepared exactly.
That's okay.
My name's Heather Gorham, and I live directly behind the proposed new development, and my property faces Sudan Street. Firstly, I'd just like to note that in the community consultation process referred in your report on page 135 of your papers, the meeting was held on the 9th of June. It was held at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, which directly followed a public holiday, and we received our notification on the Thursday prior. Well, I couldn't get the time off work to be there, so hardly anyone was at that meeting, and it's because not enough people had enough time to know about it. It's not because we weren't interested.
Yeah.
A couple of other things that affect me. Okay, so the zoning for Bell Street is Zone 1 residential growth. However, half of the proposed units are actually going to have addresses in Brunswick Street, which is the rear laneway. There's currently no other dwellings that have been allowed to have addresses or face the laneway up till now. The laneway was originally designed to be used for rear access to our properties. Most of them don't have driveways onto the front street. And until the car wash, which currently occupies this site, the laneway was actually closed to through vehicle access. So therefore, shouldn't the dwellings that are facing Brunswick Street be zoned the same as the rest of the residential streets in that surrounding area and only allow for double-storey rather than triple-storey dwellings? And with the dwelling diversity, which is mentioned on page 137 of your papers, it states that the dwellings provide for a range of sizes and types. They're adaptable and being able to provide for additional bedrooms if decided. However, the dwellings are being put forward to be approved as 2-bedroom dwellings, and based on this, car parking provisions have already been sought to be reduced. If the dwellings are approved as 3 bedrooms, additional car parking requirements would be required. So, in essence, further car parking reductions are being evaded by the use of words of labelling the spaces on the plans, and it seems that the report in the papers provided endorses this dishonest process. Where are the additional cars going to park? Because there's nowhere to park in the surrounding neighbourhood except in the surrounding neighbourhood streets or along the Brunswick Street laneway. They can't park along Bell Street. Also, in the diversity of dwellings, there's no allowances for anyone with disabilities, elderly residents. All the units have stairs. The diversity in range would not seem to be met in any other way and diversity other than how the rooms are used for once they've been built. My main concern, though, is overlooking. In the papers, it currently says that there are no requirements for screening for all the windows that face the buildings that will face my property. They'll all look, 4 of them will look straight into my backyard. I have my main living area in the back, and I've got 2 sets of French doors and 2 full-length windows. All those units from level 1, their balconies, and level 2 will be able to see straight into my backyard. I know that requirements don't allow for this. They say it's okay, but I'll be able to see them. They'll be able to see me. Just to sum it up, I believe that it's a very large and unattractive solid block building and has no respect in any way in character. It doesn't complement and is not sympathetic with the current character of the suburb, especially in the immediate vicinity of the building. The report clearly states that the majority of dwellings around this proposed building are single-storey residential dwellings, and I find it really disappointing that it's being considered as an option on this location. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please come forward.
Good evening, councillors. My name is David. I'm a town planning consultant.
Oh, sorry. Are you for the applicant?
I'm for the applicant.
Yes. Okay. We'll let the objectors go first, and then please come forward after.
For the previous objector, was she on the Southern Street side?
So, what side? Just the previous objector. What side were you on?
At 65 Sudan Street, directly behind.
Yeah, beautiful.
Okay. Yes, please come forward.
Is it still Southern Street?
Evening, councillors. I'm Felix Saponi. I live in Sedan Street, which is directly behind the Councillor Thompson. How are you? Good to see you. My two main concerns are parking and overlooking issues. I can't believe that people on those balconies are going to be able to look into people's backyards. And I need to point out that a precedent has already been set with Hungry Jacks and their overlooking issues, and they have been made to build a wall so no one can overlook from their property. So I can't believe that it's not happening with this. With parking, the 3-storey dwellings say 2-bedroom, but potentially a 3rd bedroom, so which could be a share house, which you could have 5 to 6 cars going to the one property. The only place these cars can park are in Sedan Street, and it's just a 50-metre walk through a beautiful piece of open space to the proposed site. So if you've ever been down Sedan Street, it is a nightmare already. If you get cars parking on both sides, it is a struggle to get down that street. So I implore council, if you approve this application, put 2 conditions on it. 1, parking, and sight screens on the balconies. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Are there any further objectors who wish to speak? Yes, please come forward.
My name is Fran Mackerson and I live at 59A Sedan Street. My back fence is diagonally opposite the proposed development at 324 Bell Street. I have serious concerns about the precedent this development will set for other large developments adjacent to residential areas. The new planning regulations encourage higher density housing, but any new dwellings must also respect the character of the neighbourhood and be in sympathy with the existing residences. I believe the mass, design and presentation of this building does not meet this criteria, as residences here are mostly single-storey with pitched roofs. The development covers 64% of the site, which the report says is allowable when it should only be 60%. I feel very unhappy with the decision to allow the height of the building and the building site area to be greater than the recommended for this type of building. There will be a drastic change to the streetscape in Bell Street, as this development is 9.85 metres high. There are no other 3-storey buildings between Melville Road and Sydney Road, except in the commercial area around Coburg Station. I am very concerned also that the report highlights environmental issues, as the car wash was previously a petrol station. This is a flood-prone area, and there would be serious implications for residents if the site is not thoroughly decontaminated. Energy efficiency measures are minimal, with only north-facing windows included in the plans. There are no plans to install solar panels, solar hot water or rainwater tanks. It defies belief that a new structure does not have these features. Moreland Council has led the way with these initiatives and encouraged residents such as myself to install solar panels and rainwater tanks. There are 12 dwellings in this high-rise development, and I would have thought energy-saving measures would be an integral part of the design. The report indicates that the neighbourhood is in transition with the introduction of higher density activity centres. This development needs to be a more sympathetic, innovative design with sustainable features, not only for future residents in these dwellings, but the surrounding neighbourhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please come forward.
Hi, how are you going? I'm Kate. I live at 61 Sudan Street, which is also behind the far end of the development. I'm not going to reiterate all the things that the other objectors have said, except to say that I fully support all of them. I think at a minimum, a lot of us have the main concern with Brunswick Street really being a laneway and not being suitable to have access for 6 properties, especially that it's an unmade area and that the only concession that's been made is that they're going to put a curb in, but when we're talking about the car parking and the fact that there's likely to be people parking on Sudan Street, the other area that people are going to be parking where they already do, for those of us who live in Sudan Street, is also on Brunswick Street, and the fact that you can get straight through from Brunswick Street Lane and then past these developments onto Bell Street. And really, I just think I would like it not to be going ahead, but even if it does, and it looks like it may, that really to keep it as an unmade laneway just seems completely ridiculous, given that they've got 2 up to 3 bedroom dwellings, capacity for 1 car park per dwelling, and really the likelihood is that there'll be more cars than that going through. So I don't want it to go ahead. I think it's too high. It looks into my backyard, but certainly there needs to be some changes made to that Brunswick Street strip of access. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please come forward.
How do you do?
Hello.
My name's Ron Smith and I live at 57 Sudan Street in close proximity to the new development. I didn't know that I was going to be overlapping what some of the other objectors have said, but only a short statement anyway. I have particular concerns about the traffic and parking in Brunswick and Sudan Street. Even for a short time I can rarely get a park in front of my own house on Sudan, but I'm also blocked on my rear gate where I do park my car regularly. We already have through traffic on Brunswick Street, which is unmade, as has been stated, and the dust from that is pretty severe sometimes. Although a report suggests future residents in this development will not seek vehicle access via Brunswick Street, this is most unlikely because they're using it even to cut down the laneway off Sussex and come down to avoid the traffic lights on the corner of Bell and Sussex. That you can stand there and count them. There would be one every 5 minutes going down there. Many cars are also parking their cars on Brunswick Street during the day because they're catching public transport, or they have businesses on Bell Street. At the present time, there are a number of new dwellings being built or had permits granted in Sudan and Bell Streets, that at 69, 63, 68, 55 Sudan, and then on Bell you've got 310, 312 and 318 within the same block. This means that there will be approximately 30 new dwellings where there had only been 6 houses in the business previously, and quite a few of those are going to be turning into the Brunswick or cutting out into Bell Street, and I reckon it's going to become a real traffic jam around there. Whether there are plans to pave Brunswick Street, I don't know. But that is my biggest objection, really, of the parking. I believe it's just going to become horrendous. And I can't see how so many times the council does approve a reduction in parking requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further objectors who wish to speak? If the representative for the applicant would like to come forward.
Thanks, councillors. My name is David. I'm a town planner. I've been involved in this project from the start. Probably been in with council for about 18 months, coming up to 2 years. And fundamentally, the design, as you look at it now, has an east-west orientation, two blocks of buildings. But when it was first lodged, they were spun around, so we had 2 north-south buildings. And we've worked with council's planners and also their urban designers, and it was at their request that we flipped the design around. And that had 2 fundamental advantages. Firstly, it took all vehicle access off Bell Street, whereas at the moment the car wash has an access points to Bell Street. So now there'll be no vehicle crossover directly to Bell Street, which obviously is a safer response and allows for landscaping right across that frontage. But the other second advantage that council's urban designers wanted was to activate Brunswick Road, or Brunswick Street. It's a 10-metre wide street, and it's council's preference that we, in terms of urban design principles, to have dwellings fronting that street rather than backing onto them. There's no vehicle access proposed, just doors, but it creates a bit of movement, lights, windows and so forth, where there's surveillance and activates that area and makes it a safer space. So that's the rationale behind that design philosophy. So it's probably been 18 months to 2 years in the process, but we feel it's a design now that responds to the various interfaces. Since this application has been going through its process, the zoning of the land has changed. It's now in a residential growth zone 1. You may know that's the most intense of the residential zones. I'll just read you one of the purpose points of that zone. It's to provide housing at increased densities in buildings up to and including 4-storey buildings. So you've got a 3-storey form before you here. Now, in that zone, there's a maximum height allowed of up to 13.5 metres, and we're just over 9 metres at this stage. Now, our site, as you know, it's a large site that's a car wash at the moment, but it's a 1,389 square metre site. It has 3 site frontages, and a frontage to Bell Street. So if there ever was a site where you're going to have a 4-storey large apartment building, this is really the site. And what we're saying to you, this is not a development that's pushing the boundaries, it's intense. Could almost even be termed an underdevelopment in that it's a storey less and of a form that you don't expect in a size of this site in this location with this zoning. Just a few of the features I'd like to highlight, some of the attributes. We're obviously replacing a car wash, which falls under an industrial use with a residential use, which is obviously a less intense use. The site has been decontaminated and ticks all boxes in that regard, and that's been covered by council. We've got 12 3-storey buildings, so again, 3-storey height, not the 4 allowed under the zone. There's no basement car parking or that level of excavation. At present, we have Bell Street access. There's no direct access to Bell Street, so it's a safer vehicle arrangement. All levels have been recessed from the eastern side boundary. So we have one sensitive interface being to the east, and we've pushed the building right away there. Now, sometimes we have discussion about the extent of overshadowing of properties and how many hours of sunlight we're getting. We've got an arrangement where the properties to the east, when we consider the shadows cast by their current fences, we're actually casting no additional shadowing beyond the fence, which is quite extraordinary for a building of this size. Why? Because we're not maximising, and it's not an aggressive design that's maximising the site. Overlooking, we've heard a lot of discussions on overlooking. Res Code has parameters on overlooking distances. We more than comfortably satisfy those in terms of overlooking. There's no impacts of visual bulk. The resident parking has been provided. ESD principles that have been incorporated into the design. One of the benefits of flipping around and having that east-west orientation is that allows balconies and main living areas to face directly north, which promotes solar efficiency and so forth. We've improved quality materials and finishes as a result of some of the objections received, improved some overlooking and some of the design detail. But certainly it's been a process where we've worked exhaustively with council officers. We haven't gone straight to VCAT, we've worked with them, haven't maximised the site. It's a development that achieves high compliance with Res Code and council policy, the residential growth zone. We feel it's a development we're proud of. I think we've worked well with council officers. We know that the residents are located in a street behind. There's a 10-metre gap between Brunswick Road and there's no direct interfaces in there. So we ask, please, that councillors reward the effort that we've made to work with council's planners and urban designers with a development that we feel will stand up well in the coming decades. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from councillors to the applicant or the opposite?
Yes, I have many. Robert, can you explain to me the screening from the northern end of the development overlooking Brunswick Street?
So the screening is that So basically there's no screening provided, and the reason for that is the distance. So the overlooking provisions of the planning scheme work on a 9-metre distance.
Somebody just said it was a 10-metre wide lane or street.
Yes. That's correct. So basically the street in itself achieves that 9-metre buffer.
Do you have access to Google Maps or something on there? And are you able to bring up the site specifically? Because I've just got it here in front of me, and it's pretty interesting in that the car parking or the cars that are parked already in Brunswick Street. How do we have a street that's an unmade road? And where am I going to wash my car? More than
When your kids are old enough,
no, I've got a photo of them because we went and had a look at the site on the weekend and we went, they sprayed. It's good. There, right there.
So, subject site, Gordon Street being the side street, Bell Street, and Brunswick Lane coming along the back, unsealed.
I'm finding it hard to find reasons to object to it, that's all. You got any questions?
No.
Okay, if there's no further questions, is there a motion that a councillor wishes to put forward? Councillor Thompson?
Can I move the recommendation as presented on the screens in front of you, and I'll speak to it extensively if I have a seconder.
Councillor Ratnam, second.
Prior to these meetings, we have an extensive briefing on what we're about to see, and we get an opportunity to ask some questions there. It gives us an opportunity also to go and visit the site, of which I did last weekend with my boys to wash the family truck. And I was amazed at how wide that lane was behind this particular zone. 10 metres was what was indicated, and also the amount of people that are using that lane as a car parking, which I assume most of those people are from those residents there. This interface does not have access coming from there. It's all from the Gordon Street side, which seemed to me to be a perfectly good location to do it. As indicated by the town planner moments ago, this is a growth zone where we're sort of saying, well, you could go to 4 stories here, and they've gone to only 3. And also we've indicated that you could probably go to a unit per 200 square metres in this particular area, and I don't think they've achieved that either. But so when we looked at it, all intents and purposes, it looked like a reasonably good offering. Whilst I understand that if you live here and you're concerned about the overlooking aspect, a distance of 10 metres between that property and the back of your property is an extensive amount of space. And once this is installed, you'll probably find that it is quite a distance. And surprisingly, people don't stand in their bedroom looking over the street. But I understand that that is of concern to you because it has happened behind my lane as well, where residents there have built behind them. And one of the conditions we put in there was asked to have their glass blanked out or tinted or whatever it was that was undertaken there. But in looking at this one, it just doesn't seem practical. It seems like a very large lane. My interest here would be more as to why we have a lane that has a name. We don't name any of our lanes, which indicates to me that this is supposed to be some sort of an access or street. I'm more concerned about those of you that live here not wanting to bring too much attention to the fact that this is an unmade street, because all of a sudden we might turn around and do exactly the wrong thing and make it a street. But there's an opportunity for us to perhaps sit down, particularly with those affected residents. And I know some of you have been affected pretty badly in the last few months with the Shell service station as well, and the fast food outlet. An opportunity for us to sit down and have a discussion as to what you would like to see this lane being turned into, or how it should be treated. Because I certainly can understand that you don't want to have people coming and using it as a slip through. The ability for us to be able to engage with this new development and have the ability for them to either not enter it at all or to come in one way may also be a possibility. But also there might be some permanent parking that we can ascertain in here as well. But again, it's a discussion that needs to be had with the residents in this group, and I would probably ask that any of you that are interested to send us an email and let's have that discussion, because I'd like to see something done here that is going to sort of remedy some of the issues that this new development is going to cause. And once this one has happened, because this is a growth zone, others in the area are probably going to want to do similar sort of things along there.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Ratton.
Very briefly, Councillor Thompson, I just want to say special thanks to the objectors. You've articulated some of your concerns very well, and they're very compelling. In looking at the zoning of this land, and you've heard some of the reasons for why this development could be more intensive and more sort of ominous on your landscape than it is has been presented to tonight or proposed tonight. So that it has the capacity to be more intense if it wants to be. So we're glad for it that it is underdeveloping from the maximum capacity that it has. Your reasons are very compelling, and unfortunately, it's just a really difficult situation because you're right on the boundary of a neighbourhood residential zone and a growth zone, and those properties on those interfaces all across the municipality face very similar issues, and it'll be happening more and more as the new zoning reforms are put into practice and implemented. So I definitely acknowledge and hear you, and I wish in a way we could do a lot more. Some of the things that we have to think about are the VCAT test. Can this be objected to and appealed and won at a later stage, and therefore losing some of the conditions that we've imposed? Could another application be made that ends up being a much more intensive development, ending up with a much more detrimental impact for that transition area or the interface area? And some of those questions we've had to ask ourselves here. And while I would have loved it to have been much more in keeping with the existing character, particularly on that northern end, I feel like the risk is too great with this one, given that it's come in under the intensity that it could actually yield on that site. So definitely hear some of the concerns, and thank you for articulating them, and to the applicant as well, in terms of making the case for it not occupying the full space and envelope that it could. Hopefully that reaches some sort of more compromise outcome for the residents as well. And definitely concur with Councillor Thompson's comments about Brunswick Street and what we can do there, and happy to have the conversation with the residents.
Thank you, Councillor Ratton. I'll put the recommendations on page 127 to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. And I will pass to Rob to sum up the process from here.
Thank you, councillors. The Urban Planning Committee have decided to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit in accordance with the recommendation contained in the report. All parties will receive a copy of the notice of decision. Objectors will have 21 days in which to lodge an appeal through the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal. Likewise, the permit applicant has 60 days in which to lodge an appeal against any conditions contained within the notice of decision.
Thank you, Robert. We'll now move. I'll give the gallery a chance to move. Sure. Thank you. We'll now move on to DDs.
Can't, unfortunately. Don't have quorum.
Okay.
Just walked out, didn't you?
Right.
Probably right.
Okay, well, we'll just have a short break until Councillor Samantha Ratnam returns. Yes, please talk amongst yourselves. Yeah, it's pretty good.
I feel like we've just berated those people twice in the last pocket
Knocked it into shape.
It's 10 metres wide though. It's not a gravel road, it's a gravel bloody street.
Usually don't name them unless they're constructed, so it's quite.
Why is it unconstructed and named? Because it's so wide. Shitty name too. Should change the name. Brunswick Street coded. Oh, thanks. Thanks for that. Just hold the whole meeting.
Oh, Cora, sorry about that. Oh, power.
Okay. We'll now resume the meeting. And we'll move to number 2, View Street, Pascoe Vale, planning permit application, MPS 2015-47.
Thank you.
And I'll pass to the planning officer. Thank you.
The application is located at number 2 View Street, which is to the northeast of View Street. The proposal seeks approval for the construction of 8 double-storey dwellings and the reduction in a visitor car parking space. The subject site is located in the General Residential Zone 1. Immediately opposite the subject site is the growth zone, and the site is also on the outer edge of the Neighbourhood Activity Centre. The photos here represent the subject site, which is developed by a split-level dwelling. To the southeast of the site is number 9 Austin Crescent, a recently developed site with 9 double and triple-storey dwellings. Whilst we don't have a photo of the property to the northwest, that comprises of just a single double-storey dwelling, which at the moment has a planning permit application before council for additional 8 double-storey dwellings. Opposite the subject site are some new, infill development, but it is built some time ago. In terms of the details of the application, the proposal includes 2 reverse living dwellings and 6 traditional style dwellings. Dwellings 1, 2 and 3 have vehicle access from View Street, and dwellings 4 to 8 gain access from the laneway at the rear. The proposal is of a contemporary design with flat and skillion roof forms. The application was advertised and 3 objections were received. Key issues included amenity impacts, reduction of car parking and overdevelopment of the land. We conducted a consultation meeting and 1 objector showed up to that consultation meeting. It's recommended that the application be approved, subject to conditions.
Thank you. Are there any objectors in the gallery who wish to speak to this?
Surprisingly, no.
Is there a representative for the applicant present? Yes, please come forward.
Thank you, Councillor Davison, council officers and fellow councillors. My name is Lorenzo Rigoni. I'm a planning consultant from Terrain Consulting Group, and I've asked to say a few words regarding this item. This is a large site, 1249 square metres, general residential zone, and there is development occurring in the local area. You have medium density development of older stock opposite. You've got the recent development, 9 Austin Crescent, like an inverted living, 2 to 3 storey forms. This development is 2-storey, ranges in height from 5.9 to 6.4 metres to the eave line, so it's certainly lower in height than the adjoining property. So what strikes you when you have a look at this particular proposal is the layout. I'm not sure if the officers could bring up the floor plan, but what the layout does is it actually splits the car parking arrangements to View Street. You can see how it provides access to 3 car spaces, and then the laneway to the rear provides the balance access. So therefore you've got a pedestrian way along the southern boundary rather than the whole of the development accommodating car parking to and from the site. So it's a good response. It's making it more pedestrian friendly rather than car parking dominant. There was a consultation meeting that was held on the 20th of July, and there was 1 resident that attended the meeting. The officer's report indicated there were no changes, but the architect did meet with officers and presented a discussion plan dated 28th of July, and that went through a series of modifications, amongst other things, particularly focusing on dwelling 2. And what that did, that increased the setbacks of dwelling 2 from the southern boundary. Also looked at had a skillion roof, put a flat roof form to reduce the height to address issues of shadows. Also some additional overlooking and screening measures to dwelling 2 as well. And in many respects, and also some ground floor windows also double glazed to reduce impact on vehicle noise. So there has been some further revisions post-consultation meeting, and many of those modifications are reflected in the officer recommendation. So without going through all the report, we've got strategic and urban design support for the proposal. Council's traffic engineers are in support as well. There's a high degree of compliance. It's modern, contemporary, but it follows the slope of the land well, and doesn't have an adverse impact from amenities, shadows, overlooking and form to the adjoining properties. One other thing is you may notice from the area if you visited that the 9 Austin Crest actually sealed the laneway right up to the site, and it's just short. Speaking to the permit applicant leading up to this hearing, they're intending, even though it's not a permit condition, actually it's to seal that land directly to the rear. It makes good sense in terms of the proposal and to have access in sealing to the rear. So it's not a permit condition, but that gives indication of the type of product that the applicant wants to put forward ultimately when it's constructed. Thank you, councillors, and respectfully request the planning permit issued.
Thank you. Is there any discussion from councillors in relation to this? No? Any questions? No? Is there a motion?
Oh, you can if you like. I'm happy to move the recommendation on page 148 through to 151 even.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much for that. We note that the area is prone to development. The block sizes are enormous. The views will be spectacular for some of these locations. It's good use of the land. It's a nice sized development when you take it in, look at it in context with the rest of the residents in this particular location, and it's been well thought out. And the icing on the cake of sealing the road for us, that's lovely as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Ratner? No? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. And I'll pass to the officer to sum up the process from here.
The Urban Planning Committee has decided to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit subject to the conditions in the recommendation. Objectors will have 21 days to appeal council's decision, and the applicant will have 60 days to appeal any conditions of the notice of decision to the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal.
Great, thank you. And I declare the urban planning meeting closed. Thank you for all coming and your submissions.